Hello, everybody. My name is Corinne Straight. Welcome to Plots and Politics. I'm going to sound a little after school special right now, but this is a very special episode of Plots and Politics. I'm going to call this Plots and Politics Perspectives because I want to introduce you to somebody this evening in the South Bend community. He is a well-known figure. I had the pleasure of meeting him in person for the first time a couple of months ago, and we had a really great conversation. And he was somebody I've had in my head saying, hey, I want to have that guy on the show. I want to talk to him. So please join me in welcoming Chief of the South Bend Police Department, Scott Ruszkowski.
Hi, Corinne.
Hello, Scott. How are you?
Great opening. I got goosebumps. Thank you.
That was a fun one, wasn't it?
Yes.
Well, Scott, we met a couple of months ago. I've actually known of you because I was working in South Bend with Mayor Pete Buttigieg back when you were appointed the police chief in 2015. And as I was preparing for this interview and, of course, doing my Google stalking on you, when I saw that you first joined the SBPD in 1988, I kind of had this like whoosh moment in my head. And I said this to you in my email as I'm like kind of giving you my train of thought that I think of somebody born in like 1895 and everything that they saw in their lifetime, right? Like electricity, indoor plumbing, cars. I mean, it like blew their mind. When I look at somebody starting their career in law enforcement in 1988 to 2025, that is light years away. So that's kind of where I wanted to start. The incredible transformations that have happened, not only in the South Bend community, but also in your profession in the last almost 30 years.
Yeah, I was born after 1895, just so everybody knows
for
that.
clarification, yes, he was.
There are oftentimes I feel like I was born before 1895. I can tell you that. But no, you're absolutely right. I was hired in October of 1988. I was sworn in March of 1989, and I've been here ever since. Held every rank on the police department, been everywhere. So essentially been there, done that, when it comes to policing. And looking back as you talk about it, it's kind of surreal because it is a very long time, almost my 37th year here. However, it seems like it was just yesterday that I did walk through these doors.
When you think about the tools that you had in your toolbox as a new officer in 1989, what tools do you have now that you think, oh, how did I ever do my job without that?
It's funny that you say that because I vividly remember standing out on what we call a back ramp. We didn't have take-home cars back then. We didn't have air conditioners in cars back then. We had red and blue lights that rotated slower than a homing beacon, or a lighthouse. Those were literally that slow. And we had a briefcase, a nightstick, and I think it was a 6 or 8 cell flashlight. And then we had our little file folders for crash reports or for police, whatever it was.
Actual paper file folders, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, paper. And we always had, the rule was you had to have at least 2 pens, and then you had to have a third stash somewhere. I don't know where that somewhere was, but we always had 3 somewhere. So, and then here we are, fast forward, I have AI putting my matrices together and where is the best places we could be at specific times on specific days of the week. And I'm like, man, we had to figure that out on the back of an overtime card. Where were the auto thefts occurring? Where were people, getting robbed? Things like that. We'd write it down and head to those areas. Now we have a computer. You open it up and you log in and you do your retina scan and everything else to get in there. And all of a sudden the cops just have to drive there and be there.
You're doing a retina scan to get into your computer?
No, I was being a little facetious there, but no,
okay.
But we have like 900 passwords to get into every app that we have.
Everything. I'm thinking of it feels like a movie sometimes of how you are in everything is in your car. Cause you've really, from what police vehicles, looked like even 15 years ago to what they look like now. Like you're really like a traveling office.
It absolutely is. I mean, that's kind of a downfall in policing is you compel the officers to be into that traveling office. The problem with that is you have a proverbial barrier. That window going up is to keep sound out so you can concentrate on the work you're doing in your office. The problem is when you're on the other side of that window, you think that's a barrier. they don't want to hear, meaning that officer in that car does not want to hear from you or
Mm-hmm.
be seen by you or vice versa. And that is literally not the truth, but it's so much harder for officers to do what is necessary and needed inside that car rather than being out their car talking to another human being.
And when you look at how much time maybe a regular officer would spend in the office 20 years ago versus today, is it mostly just vehicle time now?
No, we're actually moving a little bit more. So with technology, there are some good things. We have bicycles now that you don't have to pedal, which is kind of
Oh,
anticlimactic.
isn't that fancy, huh?
I would say, and those things are really, really fast. And we have other means of transportation and modes, but we've started pushing more and more again, or working harder on top of what we've been doing with our walking patrols. So schools we've always done, school zones we've always done. Now we're moving more into and besides parks, more and more into the neighborhoods. And the neighborhoods are, that's where everybody is that needs to be talked with, not to, not at, but more importantly, that is where we need to be so our neighbors can be heard, our family members in those neighborhoods, maybe not blood relation, but well, I guess we are blood related at some point. Whether you're religious or scientific, we are blood related at some point.
All from somewhere, right?
That's right.
And thinking about technology and the advantages that it has given you, is there any amount of technology that is going to replace that personal relationship with the people in the community?
Yeah, you saw me probably shake my head when you were saying that. Absolutely no way. I mean, that is my firm belief as a human being that you can never take that out of the equation, no matter what happens. So there is good things, like I said before, with technology. I mean, here we have, oh my gosh, we have ShotSpotter, and we have our own real-time crime center. We have license plate readers. We have fuses. We have all these different things that put us in the places that the main focus there is to deter bad things from happening. So we have a playground. The city of South Bend or the county of St. Joseph or the state of Indiana is one big playground, and everybody should be on that playground. However, you can't bully people on that playground. You can't do bad things on that playground. So you're all welcome. Just don't do bad things. And that's what our job is, to try to stop.
What do you say with the technology? And
yes.
So what do you say to somebody who says, this is Big Brother, y'all are watching me? Where's my privacy? The feeling of losing privacy or being watched all the time. How do you respond to those kind of concerns?
So there's 2 points of that, and they're not necessarily wrong. When people think that we're using it for nefarious reasons, that is literally not true. But I could say that till I'm blue in the face, but somebody's beliefs and values are going to be their beliefs and values. I just tell you that we operate facts, evidence, truth. That's what we do. That's what we are expected to do. And that's what we owe our family members, meaning our community family members. I know we owe that to them at the very least. And it's not simple. Hey, we pay your salary. That is only part of it. We are doing things that most people can't or won't do, but we're doing them on their behalf because they can't or won't do them. But the expectation is still there that we do. So it's not a Big Brother thing. It certainly is not. And matter of fact, every victim that I've talked to was thankful that we had those measures in place. Now, it may have been 30 seconds after an incident, or 30 days, or 3 months after an incident. But when we've captured somebody who did something wrong to somebody else, they've always been thankful that we had that technology there to help capture that person.
And I'm sure many people could think of different incidents of like, oh gosh, I really wish there was a camera there then. If somebody had a Ring camera, if somebody had something, I could be able to prove X, Y, or Z. So it's a double-edged sword there.
It is. And it's also funny when you hear people say, man, where's a cop when you need one? Well, just look up. Maybe there's one there.
Yeah.
So there is that part.
They're going to be here somewhere. So, I was thinking about this too, of growing up, being a kid in the 80s and 90s, being in the DARE program, the Say No to Drugs in the Nancy Reagan era. I really feel like I had that t-shirt for a good 25 years. Wish I still had it. Would be a classic at this point. So thinking about the approach to policing and in the war on drugs era, can you talk a little bit about what that was like in the early 90s in an urban environment in South Bend?
Yeah, it was extremely difficult. We, back in the era that I got on, so that was, late 80s, early 90s. That was when we had the very large crack epidemic. And I vividly remember that we had a huge faction from Illinois, Harvey, Illinois, to be exact, and some Chicago remnants that were coming here and trying to set up territory. And we had a lot of, I know it seems weird to hear, but that literally happened when people refer to as turf wars. And it was some extreme violence. We had massive shootings and homicides all over something so ridiculous as drugs. And that was a long time to get through that. And of course, then we had our own people here or in our own community setting up shop because it was a theoretically quick and easy money. And obviously, there's going to be a victim of some type for something anytime there's any drugs involved. It doesn't matter if they're legalized, decriminalized, whatever. I won't get into the whole marijuana thing, but even with that, there are still black markets and after effects that occur when these things happen. So no matter what type of drug, and PCP was another one that was pretty prevalent back in those days. And unfortunately, we just had a couple cases here in South Bend where that's resurfaced yet again. So hopefully we can put a stop to that.
And hopefully we can look back on that time, both from a law enforcement perspective and a societal perspective, and understand that we really sucked at helping people with substance abuse problems.
Absolutely. And, I'm glad that you said that because almost like things are now, but it's not quite as prevalent per se. It's kind of spoken behind closed doors. Back then it was, we're going to arrest our way out of this. We'll just start snatching people up left and right who are dealing in drugs, who are using drugs, and et cetera. And if you remember, about that same era was they started getting rid of like here we had Epworth, Oak Lawn, Madison Center. Mm-hmm. Those were some of the places we could take people with substance abuse issues and get them the help that they needed. Well, they started closing all these places down, and even the mental health facilities started to be closed down. And then everything that was drug or mental health related was thrown in our laps. Mm-hmm. And we're still seeing a lot of remnants and resurfacing of that today. And that's just, when we took an oath, we took that oath. And like I said before, with the human aspect involved. But on the flip side, you expect us to uphold law and order. The thin blue line is the line between order and chaos. It doesn't mean anything else. And that's what our expectations from our community, from our family is. However, talk about wearing different hats. We have many more added back then and even now.
When you wearing different hats, I thought about it also in the framework of kind of similarly to what you see almost in a public education environment, where you are seeing the societal issues show up in classrooms, and there's a lack of adequate counselors, there's a lack of adequate staff. When you just when you look at what the classroom was 35 years ago, the number of staff per student, that is so much lower now. So teachers they are the parent, they're the counselor, they're the nurse, they're the chef. From a public service perspective, how do you tell the folks that are in charge of the purse strings, so that your city council, your state legislators, we are wearing too many hats, we need additional resources? How do you convey that message?
Pretty much like you just said, but those are often in committees or individual meetings with council members or other personnel that are involved with those purse strings. But there's no amount of money you can throw at a police department and go, okay, go ahead and fix this. I found that out over many years. I mean, we're talking, 3, 4, 5 million budget a year when I got on. and we're at 56 to 59 million dollars just at our police department alone with all these added things. Now, again, throw in technology and things like that, one would think that you would have more time to do A, B, and C. That's not true. We're still getting 102,000 calls a year for service. So these things are still happening, yet more things are happening beyond that. So when you talk about school teachers and counselors and things like that at school, which are very few and far between, and how they do it is beyond me. I mean, we have ways and means that we can protect ourselves. They don't. And that's why we are called out to many of these situations at schools or other places. And again, that's what things that we could and should be doing. But we've even fallen to the civil aspect. We're trying to settle property line disputes, and the neighbor's dog keeps barking. Things like that. I'm not really sure why the police would do that, but nobody else is around 24/7, 365. I mean, we are the ones who are. So there is good news. We have seen a huge step up from our local Beacon Health System, Oak Lawn and Epworth. They've done a phenomenal job of doing a mobile crisis team. They work hand in hand with our critical incident officers. So that has made some huge strides in progress. The bad news is our count of dealing with mental wellness situations have increased. So maybe it's by recognition, training, and experience, or maybe we're getting a lot more. I don't know what that answer is right now. Sadly, we're really good at it.
Is it really kind of a chicken or the egg situation here where we're trying to figure out what are the factors that are contributing to maybe deteriorating mental health, or was the mental health issues already there and we're recognizing them more? Like, yeah, how do we kind of try to peel back that onion, and what's the root?
That's a good question. I don't know if we have enough time in your show to do that, but I mean, to me, it feels like it was more recognizable or exacerbated during COVID. That's what it's, and I don't know how or why. It's just a feeling that it got. I mean, maybe it's something that was there all along, and then we just had a chance to notice it more so when we could gather our collective thoughts when we were confined to wherever it is that we were mostly confined to. That could be it. Man, that's a good question. That is, I think it's both the chicken and the egg.
Yeah. Well, and when you talk about, because we saw a lot of the closures of publicly funded or state funded mental health facilities kind of happening through the 80s and into the early 90s. And that somebody that kind of looks at public policy over time, you have to remember how long it takes for us to actually see the consequences. We're not evaluating. I mean, anybody could have said, maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe we should come up with a backup plan. Where are these people going to go? But the actual effects of that, I mean, we're really only one generation away from that. And to understand and to expect like, oh, well, yeah, we're just going to keep arresting our way out of it. We don't arrest our way out of mental health or substance abuse.
Yeah. What I think, when we had our conversation a few months back, you had brought up, it's schooling, it's housing, it's job opportunities, it's poverty levels. There was a whole bunch of things that you had mentioned, and you were absolutely right on every single one of those. Notably, on every single one of those, somehow we are get tentacled into every single one of those, whether by choice or not by choice, because something always happens based on one of those things that you had that we had discussed a couple months ago that you alluded to just a little earlier. Yeah, that's tough. You really got my head spinning right now, but.
Well, it is. I mean, you look at kind of we look at crime data, it kind of tends to be sometimes not necessarily causation, but there is some correlation of those lagging societal indicators. So like you said, difficulty finding a job, hard getting healthcare, food insecurity, things like that. Then afterwards, we're going to see a little spike in certain crimes. And so when we're not kind of addressing it on the front end, it's kind of like how we look at healthcare, right? The preventative healthcare, the little bit of prevention is going to take us a lot further.
Yes, no, you are absolutely spot on there. I think one of the confusing parts for me though is last year we were at our lowest point in Part 1 crimes in the last 10 years, a 10-year low. And then on top of that, and I'm knocking on wood here in my superstition fashion, that we've had less shootings, less homicides in the past 2 years, and than in the whole past 10 years. So we know all these things are still a factor, but there is some preventive medicine going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the people are getting the recognition that they deserve. The common theory is, well, police, you're out there doing your job now, right? Because you kind of weren't before during COVID, and we had to play catch up and do a lot of things. But that is not it. That's part of it, but that is certainly not it. So when it comes to income or income equality, when it comes to schooling, healthcare, things like that, I think are helping. And there's people that are intervening and interfering before bad things happen, whether it's family members, whether it's friends, whether it's complete strangers. But I absolutely believe that people are intervening before something tragic does happen. And I do hope that's the case, because that's the way it should be.
Looking back at when you started your career to now, and the conversations that have happened surrounding race and systemic racism, and just recognizing that, I'm just thinking, was systemic racism or racial bias or systemic bias, was that even discussed in the 90s, early 2000s?
No, seriously, not at all. And actually, the first time I ever heard that term was by Mayor Pete, as a matter of fact, when it came to systemic racism. Now, I will tell you, through my very first experience with anything, I grew up on the west side of South Bend and had been there, done that, and you name it. As a child, as a teenager, then I went into the Navy for 4 years. I came back home, worked for the street department, worked a couple other places, part-time jobs, and then finally got in the police department. But notably, not long after I got on, the Rodney King incident occurred in Los Angeles, and that was the first time that I think I can remember that there were some very contentious points in every community, and we were not exempt from that. And then fast forward, we had, I think the next incident was, and there were a couple smaller ones in there, but that burning or sensation was still there when it came to race relations. And then I think the next one was Michael Brown in Ferguson. Mm-hmm. Notably on that, Mayor Pete put me on a subcommittee task force for President Obama's 21st century policing. And I thought that was a phenomenal job that the president and the task force had put together. And I was glad to be a part of that, because essentially what happened there is good police officers, President Obama put words and structure into what good police officers should be doing and should have been doing all along. So I got to play a part in that. That is what, none of us had ever put any of that into words. Like, how do we do the things? Why do we do the things? And what should people know about how and why we do these things? And I knew, like, deep down inside, yeah, that's what that should happen. And then finally, somebody with enough gumption, being President Obama at the time, is the one who put all of that together. And then, then we had George Floyd after that, and that was contentious. And we had our own situations here in South Bend, as you remember, and those were very contentious. And I was out for, I can tell you, 3 days and nights with no sleep out in the community, talking and walking with people and answering the questions, good, bad, and indifferent answers to those questions. And I firmly believe that helped immensely.
What would be your message to, specifically in South Bend, and really St. Joe County at large, but South Bend being the most diverse part of St. Joe County, to the Black community that really has been targeted? I mean, you think of how differently, you mentioned the crack epidemic, and I think it's a valid criticism when the Black community says, when we were dealing with crack, we got arrested. All of a sudden, the white community starts dealing with meth and opioids, and everybody has compassion and everybody wants rehab. Where was our compassion? What would your response be, primarily to the Black community?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've had those conversations, and it certainly does feel that way. But I can tell you, it did not work out that way. I personally arrested just as many white folks as I did Black folks, as Hispanic and whoever, when it came to crack. The crack just seemingly So whenever there were cameras or whatever else around, it seemed like a black man was being put into handcuffs. And that was true. But there were also other people being put into handcuffs as well. My point in all that was handcuffs didn't solve all the problems. Matter of fact, they made a lot of them worse, to your point, where the stories may be a bit true, got exacerbated through the storytelling. So kind of like the boogeyman behind the door. You don't know until you know, but you believe it until you find out differently. And that is what happened in policing for that stretch. I can guarantee you it did. Because black, white, doesn't matter anybody else. When they dealt with the police officer that they've talked to before, was just another person, whether it was the cop talking with the person or a person talking with the cop, it was just another person. So that is what I think was one of the key components. Now we didn't have a lot. We didn't have a lot of cops like that in South Bend. Some were out there arresting, didn't matter what. You're not going to tell them any different. I saw it. I witnessed that. And that was one of the things I internally promised myself, that would not happen if I was ever in a chance to make a change. And I had a chance for the last 10 years to make a change. And that's the changes that we were making. Good old boy systems and things like that, things that they were condoned. Let's just go out and we find that little tiny rock, that little tiny piece of weed, and we're throwing handcuffs and we're done with it. And that just made more work, more problems, more issues for not just the police, but everybody in our community.
When you think about the lessons that you have going from rank and file into administration, the lessons that you've taken with you that you are now passing on, what are some of those kind of, if you had like your elevator speech that you're giving to the new recruits or the new folks coming in?
Oh yeah. I don't, as you could probably tell by now, I don't do elevator speeches. So every new recruit, I meet with for a minimum of 3 hours, and that's just, it's mandatory. They don't get a choice. But I don't mean that to sound like in a bad way. That is a conversation that we have. And of course, they freak out. Oh my gosh, it's the police chief or whatever. And I make it abundantly clear, I am no different than they are. It's some stars on a collar does not make me any different, any better, any greater than anyone or anything else. So having these conversations, that's what oath is one thing. Those are words. It's what your heart feels when you read those words. So your integrity, your values, your beliefs, those are something that can never be taken away from you. You can allow them to be taken, or you can stupidly or foolishly give them away. But nobody can ever do that if you stand by those values. Everyone is a brother or sister to you, a mother or a father, some type of relative to you. And if you're out there doing your job, and if you are making arrests, you're doing them because you have to, not because you can. That is the number one thing I've learned in my career. That's how cops get in trouble. They do things because they can. A badge allows them to take away somebody's liberty, take away their property, and even take away their life. And that is not what this badge is for. It is exactly the opposite. We are trying to prevent those things from happening. So I think once, especially with the younger generation, they may not necessarily have. I mean, you're talking to a guy who came along with vinyl records and 8-tracks and then cassettes, and then here we are now. The newer generation has had like instant gratification. I can call you up, I can text you within like one push of a button, and before I'd have to wait there, and we didn't even have a hold button. Mom or whatever put her hand over the phone and scream at you if you're, in the upstairs or in the basement or whatever. So the instant gratification, instant feedback, that's been a little difficult because I didn't have that when I first got on. The feedback came from me talking to another human being, not through something that I had to recharge at night. So that's been a little different. But every single one that I've talked to since they've come on, including my own son and my own nephew who are now on this police department, have given the feedback of, man, like people aren't really that bad. So the connotation that police are always dealing with bad things all the time. No, every single call that we go on, one good thing will always happen. We may not ever know what it is, but somebody will. One good thing will happen from that call.
You mentioned the stats showing that over the last 10 years, you're seeing homicides down. We're seeing shootings down. I'm a data person, and I really love digging into the numbers. And there have been some fascinating studies done showing the extraordinary disconnect between what the crime data is telling us and what people feel.
Yep.
And the separation between crime actually going down, but people feeling that it's worse. How do you reconcile that? What do you think is contributing to that?
Absolutely. There's a whole, but that's one of the other things with technology that is troublesome. So so there's crime. We know what that is, but we only know what that is that when it's reported. So technology, when it's ShotSpot or other mechanisms that we have in place, if people don't call us and tell us, we have technology that will, but that will never ever replace somebody calling saying something bad has happened. I think it's so when you have that data and you show, we know you can't go, well, let's pretend that bullet didn't go into that person. That's never happened in my career ever. Criminal components of a bullet going to a person are different. It could be intentional. It could be accidental. A lot of people don't consider that. So there's shot fire, or this guy, oh my gosh, another person's shot. Well, they were maybe cleaning a handgun and shot themselves. Or I literally had an incident where a guy shot himself because he wanted to know what it felt like. I am not kidding you.
Oh my God.
So that happened. So I can't say, well, but of course, when people hear it on the scanner, it's we got to report a shots fired. We have to report somebody shot. So automatically the assumption there, that creates the fear. And to even prove this point further, if you remember, and I know probably everybody that's in this area that's listening, go, South Bend, the city, downtown is so dangerous. Everybody has to probably still say that. And that is one thing that had bugged me for a long time. So I know, Corinne, you've probably looked at our Transparency Hub. If you haven't, please get in there and go through that. You're a data person, so you probably have.
It's fun to dig through that data. It sure is. Yep.
It is. And we put everything out there because I think, like I said before, the people who expect us to do this job, I expect them to see what are they getting from us doing our job. So with the fear of crime, downtown South Bend was the most dangerous place in the entire city. So when you put it on a heat map, it was beet blood red. And I'm like, there's no way. There is no way. I have family down there. I have family that own businesses down there. I have all of my friends are downtown South Bend, and I'm down there all the time. There's no way. Couldn't figure it out. So fast forward to technology. I have our people, my analysts, start looking at things, and they're like, oh, yeah, so here's what we have. And I just haphazardly look, and I'm like, location of occurrence and location that you reported from. Notably, the location that you're reporting was the one that was registering into the analytics, 615 North Michigan. And if you're not familiar with that address, that is Memorial Hospital. Well, Memorial Hospital tags in the heat map right in the heart of downtown South Bend, but that's only half the map. The other half of the map that made it beat red was the other location of reporting was 701 West Sample, which is the police station. So people coming to make police reports. So when you put those two halves together, you had one whole blood red mess of that. And that is literally what happened. So when we changed to go location of occurrence versus location of reporting, that changed everything. We were actually accused of manipulating the data to show that you're trying to hide things from downtown South Bend. And that is literally the furthest from the truth. It was to prove that those bad things weren't happening in South Bend. And this is the reason why. Somebody missed something. Many of us missed something from a click of a button that was being sent to the FBI, DOJ, for them to put their numbers out there. And that's what people started from and worked their way back instead of working from home and then outward.
Well, that's where the data can be your best friend or your worst enemy, just depending on how it is presented and and gathered. That's interesting. I never thought of it being reporting, well, duh, at the hospital. That's when we're
Yep,
figuring out somebody got shot. Well, that doesn't mean that's where it happened. That's
that's
just
right.
where we find out about it.
That's right.
Well, and I wanted to dive in a little bit to perception versus reality on the topic of immigration. And we've certainly seen this. Of course, it kind of dominated the last election in 2024. We've seen it here in Indiana as well, with several pretty, I would say, maybe overzealous state elected officials getting headlines for their approach on immigration. And certainly we don't need to get into all of the weeds here, but when you, from a city perspective, when you look at federal immigration policy, what is your role as the city of South Bend?
Yeah. So just to back up 1 second, I think you were very nice by saying overzealous. I have other words that I won't use to. I think per our conversation a few months ago, my perspective on this.
Yes,
and
I do. Yep.
Anybody that knows me who's either watching and or listening knows my perspective on this. With that, our job is whatever was said from a specific individual downstate was completely ridiculous, is the best I can say right now. And for anyone, I don't care who it is, to put politics or worse yet, a political party before people is tragic, in my opinion. That should never, ever be done. So when it comes to policing, I would just tell you South Bend Police, and this isn't meant to be brash or anything, but these are facts. And when I got served the same letter that the sheriff did, immediately that when I got that letter, nobody went home, including our city legal. Nobody was happy here that they couldn't go home on time. Mm-hmm. However, foreseeing what I predicted, we weren't leaving until we gave facts, evidence, proof of the accusations were completely false against us. You saw that we did it with the DOJ as well. So we did that. I haven't heard anything back, nothing back. But in South Bend, our community, you are either, from a police perspective, you are either a victim, a witness, a suspect, or anybody else. That is it. Anybody walking down the street is anybody else. You, Corinne, or me, Scott Ruszkowski, walking down the street is anybody else. If there is an incident involved, you are going to be one of those, correct? Victim, mm-hmm. Suspect, witness. That's it. We are not stopping people. We are not doing things, and we are not checking papers, and we are not doing that. That is not going to happen, period. So when people say, well, you took an oath to uphold the Constitution, absolutely we did. And one of the reasons police were created in the first place is to keep people protected from an intrusive government. And to prove that, this is why police need search warrants and probable cause and affidavits and things of this nature to do our job. When you have or could have, whether it's state or federal level, usurping that process, we as cops in communities have or should have significant issues with that, if that is what is being done. But I will tell you, anybody else, victim, witness, suspect, or anybody else, that's it.
And I'll broaden out just a little bit and let people know that anybody can go online and do some research on this if you would like. But our Attorney General here in Indiana sent some letters, Todd Rokita, he sent some letters to several different law enforcement jurisdictions. Pretty much, I would say, as the letters read, they were accusations, and you are not cooperating with federal officials. You are not cooperating with X, Y, or Z. And I can understand how frustrating that was. I mean, Sheriff Redmond at the county level received the same letter. You received the same letter. And to think like, no, we are answering every single one of his questions. I know what he is saying is not right. I am defending our department and our practices. And that I'm surprised nothing has happened. So no response then from the AG's office after you sent that letter.
No, I have heard absolutely nothing. And I know a lot of people get confused on how it works. So city versus county versus state versus federal. And it is not that difficult. So if Corinne, I pulled you over on a traffic stop, I run your information. BMV, make sure you're legitimate to drive. And if you have any warrants, that will give a little dinging sound on my computer. I click on that like, oh, Corinne has a warrant. Well, I have to do my job. right? There's nothing else further. Now, we have had before where federal agencies have put somebody in a system, but that is something that is a wanted person, and that is an arrest warrant signed by a judge, not by an administrator in some federal office saying, hey, by the way, if you ever see this person, pick him up and hold him for us. That is not how it works. And I will tell you, I've had many, Sheriff Redmond is a friend of mine, and I had contacted him as well and talked to him. He did nothing wrong. And for what had or is or continues to be done to him, I think is abysmal. I certainly don't want to shake the tree again, but I'm not going to stand away from our facts, our evidence, and our proof that we did and have not done anything wrong. And for somebody just to use a platform for whatever reason they're using that platform, especially a fellow law enforcement officer, that makes no sense to me, without even calling me or sending me an email or something before any of this. It would have been completely cleared up instead of putting on a national blast, making these ridiculous accusations. And I tell you, from a personal level, that hurts personally. And all of our cops out here trying to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons makes them feel the same way that I do.
And talk about something that has drastically changed in your tenure on the police department. I mean, could you even imagine in the 1990s one of your state elected officials publicly targeting law enforcement departments in his own state?
No, absolutely not. And Corinne, I'm actually getting teared up. I apologize, but when I'm a graduate of the FBI Academy. And when I was there in 2005, one of the things that we did was, as part of our curriculum, is we went to the Holocaust Museum. What we weren't told afterwards is when we got back in front of 240 other of your peers, you had to come up and give a dissertation of a topic that they gave you in front of them. So standing at a podium in front of them. So one of the topics that I was handed was a situation where the Nazis came into a neighborhood and rounded up all the neighbors, but they held the police. There was actually police there. They held them in the station until they rounded up the neighbors. They dug a trench. They had the neighbors stand at that trench, and they told the police officers to come out there, and they gave them the choice. I won't go into it because I'm not sure of what the guidelines are on this podcast, but you can use your imagination to the only two choices they had. And also, as notably, their own family members, the police officers' family members, were at that trench, and they had only two choices. And that at times almost feels like the push that we seem to be going towards. God, I hope I'm wrong, but it sure kind of feels that way, to where it's a state that you do as we tell you or else. And that is not, I do what the people tell me or else. That is what we are designed to do. That is what we swore to do. That Constitution isn't a piece of paper that you can use at your leisure. That Constitution was made by and for the people. And that is where I think that many of us have lost our way. We need to demand that is how it happens. We people get the say in things, not, you don't get to say things for us or because of us.
And that image of police officers being forced to make an awful choice, I mean, either way was an awful outcome, really kind of strips away whatever protections you think you may have as an officer of the law. That those protections are only given to you so long as you do what you're told. It's not absolute. You can lose your rights just as much as the immigrant down the street can.
Absolutely. And then when you think about it, it's even that much worse. If you have a perspective where you're not a police officer and you're looking, going, man, if they can do what they're doing or trying to do to police departments, what are they going to do to me? We have the ways and the means and the abilities, the training, the technology, the tactics, you name it, we have that. A regular, normal not that we're abnormal, but normal, they don't have that. So if they're seeing this being done to or at them, imagine how one must feel who's not a cop and are witnessing this.
That definitely struck me, even as I read the letters from Attorney General Rokita's office and the type of language that was being used towards you and towards Sheriff Redmond. It did feel, if he's going after them, who the hell am I? I'm nobody. That there was kind of a feeling of that, of if you can go after, really the leaders in law enforcement in our community and y'all don't have any protections, you are being attacked by the state officials. There was that feeling of vulnerability.
Yeah. I don't think it's gone away. It may have lessened feeling wise a little bit, but I certainly haven't seen it go away, because I've seen it done to other agencies. Notably, I mean, at least it looks to me anyway, that if you're of a certain party, nothing happens. But if you're of a different party affiliation, then it seems like these things are happening to you. And that's exactly what happened. That's what started in Germany, in Poland. I digress.
Well, it is the political affiliation piece it's obvious, right? We saw what, especially at the county level, the sheriff is an elected position. So Sheriff Redmond, a Democrat, Sheriff Martinez in Lake County, for example, also a Democrat. I just kind of picture Rokita in his office, like looking at the map, and it's like, oh, these are the blue counties. Right, let's start drafting the letters. And then also to just say, even though as a police chief, you're not an elected official, but of course you're in a city, so you must be an evil Democrat as well, is probably the rationale there.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny because not just Sheriff Redmond, but I am friends with many sheriffs, especially up in this area, whether a D or an R sheriff. And like I said, to your point, it just seems like one party is being focused on rather than the other. And they're all great people that I know, regardless of the political affiliation, yet they're all doing things exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. There is nothing different between Elkhart County, St. Joe County, LaPorte County, Lake County. There's nothing being done different. So I can only surmise that it feels targeted.
Well, I want to wrap up here with you, Chief, but I do want to ask you one more question. So I mentioned that as the police chief, you were just appointed by the mayor. So you were appointed in 2015 by Buttigieg. You've been reappointed by Mayor Mueller when he took over. Do you ever think about running for office? Since you've never really had to do it before, you don't. I mean, I don't know if you're running for office when you're sitting down with Mayor Mueller and be like, "Hey, give me my job again." But would you ever want to run for public office?
So it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, I'm actually exploring some available options right now that are highly likely to occur in the midterm here next year. So I have a committee right now that are looking at one or two options for me. And the reason I say this is because I've been here 37 years. I love what I do. I cannot imagine myself doing anything else. But there comes a point in time, whether, me being a father of four or the proverbial father of 252 here, you have to let others step forward and step up. And I'm pretty close to that time as it is right now. However, I have a lot of tools in my toolbox, and I've always looked at myself as one who paid it forward, whether it's from a whole police department perspective or on a personal level. I believe in paying things forward. And there's a lot of things that I can do on a broader scale that I feel that I can do on a broader scale that would be beneficial on that broader scale.
All right. So you're saying there's a chance we may be seeing something in the future.
Corinne, I will let you know.
All right.
Tell you that, but you're not the first one to hit me up about that. So if it comes to breaking news, we may have to. There are some hometown favorites that have hit me up, but you're also one of my favorites. So we're gonna have to. We'll see what we can do. We'll talk.
I appreciate that. How do you feel kind of about like the pipeline that you've built of talent behind you there at the SBPD? If it's whether it is moving on to a new position for you or when you're ready to retire, how do you feel kind of about the people that are coming up behind you?
Yeah, you were asking like great questions. I'm so tickled because nobody ever asked those questions. Now the mayor did ask me that question. That of course, even Mayor Pete did. One of the things I noticed over my many years, and by the way, I spent 26 years on the street itself, and so it's only the past 14 years that I have been in totally administrative position. But I still love going out on the street. I still love interacting with people. Cops don't particularly like, oh my God, the chief's here, and all of a sudden they have to be straight in uniform, better not have a thing, whatever. I'm still a cop. On your behalf is why I still do what I do. But I can't even remember what the question. It was a great question. I can't remember what it was.
Talent pipeline. How do you feel about the people coming up behind
yes.
you? Yeah.
So coming up, one of the things that I noticed that I had kind of alluded to before is we've had some great people, great leaders, great chiefs on the police department. But like myself, they all had some type of flaw or flaws. I took all the good things. I know this is very cliche. But I definitely did not forget I never threw out the bad things because those were learning experiences. And one thing you've always heard, or anybody that's taken a leadership class would say, well, have you molded your next person to step up? No, I haven't. I've molded, hopefully under the wing, whatever thing you want to throw in there, several others that I feel would be able to step up. The bad part about this job is I can't write it down on a piece of paper going, hey, if this ever happens, this is what you do. Kind of like with HR. Like there's no class in HR class that says, oh, this is how you deal with police department stuff. Because every HR person that ever worked with us scratched their head on every single incident that they get involved in. But I have I have more than a handful of people who could step up. I have some that could do it tomorrow. Or right this minute. I have some with maybe a couple weeks or a couple months of some more help would be able to do it as well. The good news is it's less of a load for the next person. I did not have that opportunity. And on top of all that, one of the biggest log jams I've seen on this police department, and probably all police departments, was that good old voice system. That cannot happen. And once we got rid of that, the communication was open, movement was open, up and down ranks, back and forth with divisions. That had never happened. It was very siloed. Detectives, they stayed away. Patrol did their thing, and so did their thing. No, that is the collaboration is the number one priority within these walls, and that's what it needs to be for our community, for our family, for our people outside of this building.
I really appreciate your perspective on that, Chief, because as somebody else, I spent a good amount of time also working in the public sector, working in government, and my favorite colleagues, whether they were within my own city or within different jurisdictions, different departments, different governments that I came across, my favorite people that I worked with were always the people that seemed to have an appreciation that we are only a temporary steward of this position. It's not my job. I fill this hole, and there will be hundreds of people who came after me, and there were hundreds who came before me. And that gives you such a different perspective on this isn't my job. It's not mine, right? I just get to hold it for a minute, and then I'm going to pass it to somebody else.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I've told all of them, all of my command staff, all of the new officers, there will never be a Scott Ruszkowski statue in front of the South Bend Police Department. And there's not going to be one of you. But what you want to leave is people going, man, maybe we should have had a Scott Ruszkowski or a whoever the officer is statue when they leave. That then you've accomplished many things. You'll never accomplish everything. I can tell you that. As much as but we've been through so much of this police department with reorganizations, restructures, personnel coming and going, recruiting everybody. You remember, we were one of the first ones to actually fulfill our obligation of personnel on the police department. Mm-hmm. Right after COVID, we did. that was a team effort. That was great ideas. Even when people thought some things were ridiculous, they're like, no, that's never going to work. You don't know until you try. And this is, so we're not marketers, we're not advertisers, but I hired people who are, and they knew what they were doing, listened to the cops, heard what they were saying, listened to the community, heard what they were saying, and put 2 and 2 together. And now we have 4.
That was quite an achievement. I mean, there are still departments around the state who are struggling to fill all of their positions.
Yeah.
Thank you, dear. Sorry, that's my youngest child. Very professional podcast we have going on here. That's a good point to wrap up then, Chief Ruszkowski. I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your honesty and your perspective. That's really kind of what I wanted to dive into. And whether you are in the South Bend area or even just in the state of Indiana, there are so many similarities that we face in all of our communities, regardless of what they look like. And I hope that this perspective was also refreshing for others to hear.
Oh, it was great. Absolutely. I had a great time, Corinne. I hope we get to do this again. Hit that transparency hub, have your people. I love the feedback. And even if our IT people may not like the feedback, doesn't matter. I love the feedback and we'll make it happen.
I'll let you know that transparency hub is great. And I love a spreadsheet. I love organizing a spreadsheet. I love downloading it. It is really nice to kind of comb through that data. And in those moments where you feel out of control, or you have the feeling, I always want to try to find if you have that feeling, well, it's not safe, things are dangerous, I'm going to go look at the data. I'm going to go see what it tells me. And then I'm going to kind of reframe my brain here. So that's the transparency hub is really important.
Yeah. And ask a cop. They're transparency hubs too, or they better be.
They better be.
They better be.
If they're not, I'll let you know. I'll be like, this one.
There
Okay.
you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chief Ruszkowski. I would love to have you back on again soon. Maybe if you're going to pursue some kind of political ambition, we're going to talk about that. So again, everybody, Chief Scott Ruszkowski of the South Bend Police Department. My name is Corinne Straight of Plots and Politics. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, for watching. Leave a comment. Let us know what you thought. Do you have questions for Chief? What questions did I not ask that you wish I did? Let us know in the comments. We would really appreciate it. So take care, everybody.
Bye.